Yeah, the Taxpayers Union is warning about a new series of bills going through Parliament, specifically the proposed replacement for the Resource Management Act. Campaigns Manager for the Taxpayers Union, Callum Purves, joins me now. Very good morning to you, Callum.
Good morning.
Anything that is dumped just before Christmas always sort of sets your antenna tingling, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that should have served as a warning sign to us all about some of the implications of these bills that are coming through. I think what we're particularly concerned about is it just seems to be a further example of centralisation by this government, the proposals to shift planning powers from the current district councils into these 15 new regional planning committees, which are also going to have a number of unelected representatives on them, and could mean that your local area will only have one representative on the council that's making this committee that's making these big decisions around future planning in your local area.
So who will the other committee members be?
So in addition to at least one representative from each of the councils, there will also be representatives from the regional councils, but there will also be unelected representatives on those committees. The Minister has the power to appoint committee members, and it's not clear who those members would be. And also the local iwi and hapu have the ability to nominate representatives to the committee as well.
Do they have to be from the area, or can they be from anywhere?
I think they would have to be from the area of the Regional Planning Committee. Our problem with the unelected representatives, whether those be the ones from the Minister or from iwi and hapu, is that local people don't have the ability to remove those representatives should they make decisions that they don't agree with, and we think that undermines democratic accountability.
So submissions were allowed, but they closed on Waitangi weekend. Didn't give people a lot of time, did it?
No, that was after an extension, and I think that probably tells you a lot about the way the government's approaching these reforms. I think part of the reason why they haven't been talked about a lot is, unlike with Three Waters, we don't have a massive advertising campaign from the government. With the Three Waters reforms right at the start, the government were promoting their reforms quite positively. They haven't been doing the same around the Resource Management Act reforms, and that should probably set some alarm bells ringing.
The RMA needs to be overhauled though, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so many problems with the RMA.
Yeah.
The problem is all this does is introduce additional layers of bureaucracy, more red tape, and it doesn't actually solve the incentive problem that councils have, that when they grow, all of the proceeds of that growth, whether it's the GST, receipts from the houses, the income tax from the people who move into the local area, it all goes to Wellington, yet they bear the cost of development.
Yeah. So David Parker, in essence, wants to take away the ability to make planning and consent decisions from the local councils and put it in the hands of the 15 co-governed regional planning committees.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it basically is Three Waters comes to the RMA.
Yep, it's a very similar model to Three Waters, but there are also lots of other problems with it in terms of giving additional responsibilities to these committees. They have to balance 18 what are called system objectives over things like affordable housing, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also promoting different varieties of land use. And as you can see, even from those three examples, they're contradictory. But the bill doesn't set out what priority should be given to each of those objectives and who would make that decision. So as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has outlined, there's probably going to be a lot of litigation around this, which is just going to have further costs on people who are wanting to get planning consent.
In a way, have we not reaped what we have sown? Like, so few people engage in democracy with their local councils, so few people choose to vote, that the government, central government, can say, well, you're all a bunch of numpties, you're not making any decisions for yourselves, we'll make them for you.
I think it is a bit chicken and egg. I think part of the problem is that New Zealand has one of the most centralised governments in the world. We have very large local authorities compared to other countries, and also most of the spending is done by Wellington. So that means that people aren't as engaged with local councils, and also that it doesn't incentivise people to stand for their local council, which might have an effect on the quality of candidates that are available.
So given that submissions have closed, is there anything that can be done now?
Well, I think this is a political fight. We've seen over Three Waters that the government has passed the legislation, or certainly the first bill for Three Waters, but the Prime Minister, as part of his refocus onto bread and butter issues, as he describes it, is looking to review those reforms and possibly make changes. We don't know what those are yet, but Matt makes the point that if we create enough political pressure on the government, and the first step here is raising awareness, because a lot of people are not aware of these changes, then it is entirely possible for changes to be made to the reforms.
I just wonder whether, there are enough people who care. When you look at the situation that this country is in, and you still see that Labor could easily be the government. People either don't care or believe that this is the right path to go down. More centralisation, more Wellington decision-making, more decision-making by the Labor government.
I suppose people are taking lots of different things into consideration when they decide whom they're going to vote for. We know from polling on issues like Three Waters, and hopefully we'll have some soon on the RMA, that people are strongly against some of the reforms that the government has been putting forward. And that's why Chris Hipkins has been dropping them to try and get Labour re-elected. And we've seen that in terms of the polls, that's had an effect. So I think it does matter, and it's affecting what Labour are doing, and that's going to have an effect on the polls.
To just drill it home to people, give me an example of how like having one of these centralised regional committees would be bad for your local area.
Well, I suppose it's something like if there were decisions around geothermal projects in Taupo, for example, that those decisions might be taken in Hamilton, and only one person from Taupo would be sitting on that committee. But isn't the best way to make decisions. People in Taupo know best about what's the right decisions for their local area. And while, yes, it's important to consult with as many people as possible and also engage with different levels of government, those decisions should be taken by local people whom voters can remove if they don't like the decisions that they take.
Nice to hear from you. Thank you, Callum. Callum Purves from the Taxpayers Union, highlighting the series of bills. And, even if you don't follow closely what is planned for the Resource Management Act, and, even Geoffrey Palmer, who wrote the original one, just throws up his hands in horror at what it's become. So even if you don't know every single point of the proposal to change the Resource Management Act, I think the fact that the government dumped 891 pages in total just before Christmas and then closed submissions on Waitangi weekend is a surefire indicator that they are pushing something through they know will be hugely unpopular.